Hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar, Teaching Soft Skills, 15 Tips in 30 Minutes. I want to introduce our speaker. Her name is Emily Kuhn, and Emily has spoken on the topic of soft skills and employability skills several times throughout the past several years, and has learned a ton from educators and through research on what really works with today's students to help them get built up on those soft skills. A few housekeeping items before we get started. We are recording today's webinar, and with that, we will send you the recording, and it will also be available on realityworks.com. Also, we will send you the slide presentation, which is going to include several different resources, different links to online sources to help you with teaching soft skills in your classroom. And finally, we will email you a certificate of completion after the webinar as well. Now we'll save time at the end to answer any questions. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please use the chat feature and type it in there, and then we'll address it after the webinar. And with that, I will pass it over to Emily.
Well, thank you, Samantha. I appreciate the introduction. And thank you to everyone who is joining us this afternoon. We are here to share some methods that you can use to help your students develop those important employability skills no matter what you teach. We're going to kick off today's webinar by going over a quick review of who we are here at RealityWorks for those of you who aren't familiar with our company. Then we'll briefly discuss what soft skills are. Then we'll get right into those 15 tips that you can use to help your students start learning those skills. And then, as Samantha just said, we'll leave time for some questions and answers at the end. So let's get started. What is RealityWorks? Well, we create experiential learning tools that engage students, teach needed skills, and provide those valuable career exploration opportunities. For those of you who don't know, we've actually been around for over 20 years since the creation of our RealCare Baby Infant Simulator to help educators and instructors teach young students valuable skills that they can use to succeed in college and career and life. We got our start with the development of baby and infant simulators in the fields of family and consumer science and health education. And then in the last 20 years or so, we've expanded our offerings to include products and resources for the topics you see on your screen in front of you: welding, ag education, nursing training, and more. Today, we are proud to be in 67% of school districts in the US and 90 countries around the world. And we pride ourselves on partnering with educators and educational leaders to ensure that we're creating products and programs that are relevant and that meet their needs. And in fact, that's why we are here today. As you just saw, we support a variety of CTE programs: family and consumer science, health science, welding and ag, etc. And over the years, we've found that educators from all of those programs share a common concern. They're all concerned about ensuring that their students have those soft skills they need to succeed. So that's why we decided to focus today on sharing some ways you can incorporate those lessons into any classroom, whatever your focus area is. So let's start by quickly reviewing what soft skills are. They are known by a number of phrases: employability skills, job readiness skills, emotional intelligence, but those all mean one thing. They're all those personal attributes that enable someone to interact effectively and harmoniously with other people. They're considered that bedside manner of the workplace. Now, we've heard others say, and here at RealityWorks we agree, hard skills might get a student in the door for an interview, but soft skills really are what help them get and keep those jobs. And most importantly, those concepts apply to any job. Soft skills are vital for all career paths. So what makes them so vital? Well, 5 key soft skills are listed on your screen now. And we dug into the research, and you can find numbers like this everywhere. But according to a 2016 pay scale survey of more than 60,000 managers and 14,000 recent graduates, almost half of managers surveyed said that young workers they're seeing interviewing for positions at their company lack communication skills, They lack leadership qualities. They have lower than needed interpersonal and teamwork skills. And more than half claim that new graduates they see taking jobs in their company don't have those critical thinking skills. They don't have problem solving skills that they feel are necessary for the job. Like we said, research like this can be found everywhere. And what's more, educators are seeing that firsthand. That's why we're here today. So what can you do to help your students learn these valuable soft skills? Well, you may not know it, but you're already teaching soft skills all the time. It might simply be a matter of emphasizing particular skills, adding time for reflection, etc. Today, we're going to share 15 ways you can address that development in your classroom by building on what you're already doing and incorporating new ideas to help your students develop those important job readiness skills no matter what pathway they're on. So tip number 1, keep soft skills top of mind. Keeping those skills at the top of your students' minds is a great way to help them understand the importance of these vital skills. And you can do that by talking about them. Did you have a positive experience with a customer service representative the last time you visited your favorite store? Share that story with your students. Did you have a negative experience the last time you visited your favorite restaurant? Well, share that story with your students as well. Those stories could be great discussion or reflection opportunities also. You could also use posters like the one you see on your screen to serve as subtle reminders of the importance of soft skills as well. In fact, that infographic you see on your screen in front of you can be downloaded for free by visiting our website. You can go ahead and click on the URL on the screen in front of you, and as Sam said, we'll include those links in the follow-up email. And you can hang that in your classroom and use it to remind your students what soft skills are and why they're so valuable. Tip number 2, begin each class with a handshake. Now, a good handshake is a skill that can make a huge impression in any setting, particularly a business one. And you can help your students hone that skill right away by starting each day with a handshake. And doing that every day with your students while making sure that you yourself are maintaining good eye contact and a smile, you're accomplishing a couple of different things. You're teaching your students those best practices of a polite greeting, eye contact, a firm handshake, and a smile. You're giving them regular opportunities to practice this very basic skill. And you're also telling them that they're worth the time you're spending with them to greet them personally every day. Now, one neat thing, there's a link on the screen in front of you. We found a blog where a teacher actually did an in-depth study of the impact, the power of a handshake that it had on her classroom over the course of several weeks. We highly encourage you to check out that blog and see the documentation and even a video of the impact that this practice had in one classroom. Tip number 3 is to role play workplace scenarios. Now, role play is great for many reasons. It builds confidence, it promotes self-esteem, and of course, it's a great method of that student-driven active learning, which we know today's 21st century students crave. Classic scenarios, of course, include job interviews, customer complaints, handling disruptive clients, and more. But we recommend that you incorporate new ideas, like proposing a 21st century dilemma, such as, do you answer a text in the middle of a staff meeting? Or do you check Facebook at work? You could even pose questions like that as a debate between groups of students. You could use them as prompts to allow the students to be creative and see where the conversation goes. And you could also bring in others. You could invite teachers or administrators or even community members to participate in those role play workplace scenarios. Tip number 4, practice professionalism on a daily basis. I was recently in an Illinois welding teacher's classroom, and the instructor, who had come from industry, was just lamenting the fact that his students they couldn't communicate. They didn't know the value of showing up on time, etc. We got to talking and realized that a great place to start developing those skills is right there in the classroom, especially if those students aren't experiencing those requirements anywhere else, and they might not be. By demanding professionalism in your classroom, though, you're setting your students up to succeed in the workplace. So the key here is consistency. Every day you can make sure that your students know that they're expected to arrive on time, come prepared, use proper spelling and punctuation, and even dress for success, whether that's every day or on a particular day of the week. Now we know that you might not be able to do every single one of these items every day, but the key here is to mimic an office environment and get your students used to those professional habits. Tip number 5 is to implement networking activities. Now, the image on your screen right now was actually shared with us by a nursing instructor who uses one of our geriatric simulators in her CNA courses. And she shared with us the tip of using networking activities at the beginning of each semester. She pairs up her students and has them ask each other specific personal questions. And she's found that doing so not only creates an atmosphere of familiarity that promotes teamwork, which is really important in healthcare and makes students more comfortable practicing skills like the one in the picture, but it also gives her students a chance to practice those valuable interpersonal communication skills and build self-confidence, 2 important soft skills that are lacking in today's employees. Tip number 6 is to make intentional assignment tweaks. Now, we found that recent research tells us that the ability of a company to adapt has been called the new competitive advantage, and the same is true of individuals. These days, demand is growing for employees who can adapt to a changing workplace, who are open to new ideas, and who don't panic when things don't go according to plan. Well, you can do a lot to encourage these traits in your own students by intentionally tweaking assignments. In fact, I was recently interviewing some digital communication students at our local technical college, and they were telling me how quickly they had to adapt some pre-planned social media posts when their professor intentionally changed the theme of the week at the last possible minute. Now, she did this totally on purpose. She wanted them to have the opportunity to practice that adaptability and adjust to change, and it stuck with them. They had to scramble to create and schedule content and adjust their calendars accordingly, etc., and they remembered it. Those intentional assignment tweaks or changes halfway through can help your students learn how to be flexible and adapt to change. Again, 2 very important soft skills. Tip number 7 is to regularly assign collaborative work. Now, we know collaborative work is a great way to build communication skills. When you assign group projects and other collaborative learning experiences, you really force your students to work with one another to learn the content and apply it, but you also force them to learn important lessons about cooperation and teamwork. These are valuable lifelong skills that are very important in the professional workplace. Now, collaborative work is a great example of a task you're probably already doing to help your students develop those important soft skills. But the key here is to build in that extra time to emphasize the skills, reflect on the task, etc. On your screen in front of you is a link to a video that was posted by the University of Colorado Boulder, and it's a really great, does a really great job showing how to use group work effectively in a college setting. And it also features interviews with students and the instructors on the impact of group work in the classroom, and includes some really great research on best practices for implementation. So this again will be a link that's included in that follow-up email after the webinar today. I encourage you to check it out. Tip number 8, remember to reflect. Now, reflection engages critical faculties and allows information to become meaningful, but it also helps build that in-demand soft skill of critical thinking. So when can you encourage reflection? Well, the great thing about reflection is that it's something that people have to learn and practice. So the more you do it, the stronger your students' critical thinking skills will be. We recommend trying to incorporate reflection activities like journaling before something important. For instance, your students could run through what they already know about a topic before you begin discussing it in class. We recommend incorporating these activities during a long-term project or a task to give your students a chance to stop and assess their own understanding and reflect before continuing. And you could, of course, incorporate those reflection opportunities after an assignment. Ask your students what they learned, what stumped them, what was challenging, or what made things easier. Again, giving them those chances to assess and evaluate what they've learned and make those connections that today's 21st century students crave. Tip number 9 is to remember to use informal and formal oral speaking opportunities. We are faced with an increasingly connected world thanks to technology and digital media, but that also means that today's students will be increasingly communicative. They'll need those strong speaking and listening skills to succeed in the 21st century workplace. Now, you already know that formal oral speaking opportunities, like individual or group presentations, promote a number of those skills, including communication and self-confidence. But those informal oral speaking opportunities can also help build those same skills, and they present themselves all the time. When a student asks you for help, or maybe asks a neighbor to borrow a pen, or when they ask a peer for help, by making sure that your students are interacting with each other and with you while maintaining good eye contact, using a friendly tone, speaking with confidence, etc., you could maybe even initiate an impromptu discussion after witnessing a positive or a negative exchange in your classroom. You can go a long way to help your students hone those communication skills all the time. Tip number 10 is to use small talk conversation cards. Small talk, of course, is considered a foundational soft skill. It's where all conversations begin. It shows you can think on your feet, it demonstrates intelligence, and of course, it speaks to your ability to communicate. Educators who use conversation cards, we've found, are regularly giving their students a chance to practice those things, to become used to conversing with people they're not used to speaking with, to practice the 3 P's of a successful conversation card practice, which is polite, positive, and professional, and learn those valuable networking skills. So we recommend that you take a moment to come up with some pre-planned questions, keep them on little cards in a box in your classroom, and use them as an icebreaker activity for the first few minutes of class or to wind down class at the end of the day. We've heard from educators who've implemented Small Talk Tuesdays or some other set day of the week or month where they use these activities to promote those networking skills in their students. Tip number 11 is to practice giving and receiving feedback. According to a 2017 study by the Wall Street Journal, U.S. colleges are falling short when it comes to teaching students critical thinking skills like assessing evidence and interpreting data. And peer review and peer-to-peer feedback can be a really effective way to help students develop those skills. Plus, it increases student engagement and helps them see the relevancy of what they're doing, which we know is important to today's 21st century students. So to establish this in your classroom, we recommend you consider the tips on your screen. Set your expectations. Make sure your students know that it's about helping their peers and not judging. Use a detailed rubric to fine-tune the process and encourage specific suggestions. We encourage you to keep it anonymous so students are comfortable being honest and providing valuable feedback. And of course, moderate it to ensure that it remains fair and helpful. Start with a small, short assignment like the introduction to an essay or an assessment worksheet and go from there. Tip number 12 is to use video diaries. Now, today's students, we all know, are rarely without their cell phones. But the use of technology is still a sought-after soft skill. And in fact, the number of tech opportunities, employment opportunities, is expected to increase by 12% in the next 10 years. Giving your students the chance to use technology in productive, meaningful ways will help them get used to using such tools. And video diaries are a great way to do this no matter what you teach. Plus, creating those video diaries also promotes reflection, critical thinking, and communication, other valuable soft skills. Now, the image on your screen comes from one of our RealCareer Baby program users who has her students maintain video diaries throughout their simulation experiences with Baby. But you could do this in other ways, like documenting the process during a long-term research paper. I recommend starting by checking out the link on your screen, which we'll again include in that post-webinar email. It'll take you to a great article we found that lists various apps that students can use to create video journals. Tip number 13 is to coordinate mock interviews. We are all about experiential learning here at RealityWorks, and interviewing is a great form of it. Mock interviews are wonderful ways to give your students that real-time practice using soft skills like critical thinking and communication, plus it gives them experience thinking on their feet. And as a member of the business community who has participated in several opportunities to interview local students, I can personally tell you that it's worth the time. To set up mock interviews in your own classroom, we recommend considering the tips on your screen. First, starting by showing a clip from a local news show or a stage interview that demonstrates what a good interview looks like. And then encourage your students to find information on local companies and consider questions they think employers might ask them during an interview. Make sure you prepare a detailed rubric for the interviewers to use during the process so they know what they're listening and looking for, and you have a consistent method of evaluation. And you could also even use a panel of guest speakers to present to the entire class on the benefits of soft skills if a mock interview day or afternoon isn't an option for you. Tip number 14 is to use student planners. These days, we're all used to having cell phones and online calendars available 24/7 to help us stay organized, but you likely grew up using those paper student planners. These days, students are growing up with those cell phones and technology, and they might never have the chance to write down their agenda and visualize their tasks. But implementing the use of student planners in your classroom will give them that chance to learn how to manage their time, and it'll help them improve their organization and communication skills. Now, planners alone won't do the trick, but it's the habits and the routines that students use to make that will make this tip successful. A few tips we've heard from educators include using the planner at key transition times, like the beginning and the end of each class, every evening, etc. Really encourage your students to develop those habits. Taking small steps like using binder clips so the current page is always accessible will also encourage your students to use their planners. Finally, we have tip number 15, which is to consider using learning aids and resources like the RealCareer Employability Skills Program. Now, we discussed in the beginning of the presentation that we offer a variety of hands-on learning aids for CTE programs. And a few years ago, we did create one to address soft skill development. Our goal was to provide educators with a ready-to-use, out-of-the-box program that would help them teach 20 key soft skills no matter what class they taught or how much time they had. And that's exactly what you can do with this program. You can use the lessons and the activities in it to pick and choose individual lessons depending on time in your classroom, or you can use it as a full week-long program. You can learn more by going online on our website. You can preview the workbooks, preview the curriculum review, and learn more. Learning aids and resources like this can make teaching employability skills a little easier. All right, well, we just shared 15 soft skills in less than 30 minutes, actually, and in fact, we've got time for some questions. So at this time, if you have a question or a concern, you can use the chat feature on your screen in front of you, and we'll answer questions live. We'll give you a few minutes to type in.
Great, and just a reminder for everybody on the call too, we will send this presentation and a recording and that certificate of completion to everybody that attended today's webinar. If you have additional questions about products or programs or support for any of our programs, you can visit realityworks.com or email information@realityworks.com or call us at 800-830-1416, and you can see that up on your screen.
All right, well, it looks like we have no questions to answer. So again, we appreciate you taking the time to join us this afternoon. We hope you found the information useful. And don't hesitate to give us a call or send us an email if you have any questions. Thanks so much, everyone.